Hello, BillWhittle.com members, and it's time for another lightning round, just for our
You're
members.
killing me, Larry. I have to pick a new picture of lightning everything. You're killing me, Larry.
Every 3 weeks. Get used to it until they tell me to stop, at which point
That's what
I
they call
will...
overhead.
Yeah,
Who's they? Because I've told you to stop several times. I must not be part of they.
I don't listen to you. I listen to our viewers. There you go. All right, gentlemen, I have picked headlines just for you. Bill, I'm going to start with you this week. I love this one. It's from one of the UK papers. Stormy Daniels' D.C. debut is overshadowed by Trump's Supreme Court announcement as the adult film star failed to lure a crowd for both of her performances at a strip club. Bill, is the left spin on this going to be that Donald Trump denied a woman a fair working wage just to get this guy on the Supreme Court?
It'll be something like that. Wow, that seems like you should have something funny to be able to say about that. It was a dark and stormy house.
Yeah. There you go.
Thank you very much. I think the only thing I really want to say about this really is that the left seems to think that they're going to come up with some new provable example of Donald Trump's moral turpitude, at which point we will all abandon the ship and go swimming for shore just as fast as we can. And what they don't realize is we know. We knew before. We know. We will always know. We don't care. No. It's not that we don't really care. Obviously we would like to have things be better, but if you think it's going to change our opinion, no, it's not. The reason that we support Donald Trump is because of things like the deep state and the media industrial complex and all of these anti-democratic things that are trying to just destroy this country and have it ruled by a small handful of very rich and powerful people. And so I don't much care about Stormy Daniels, and I think, frankly, if your evening's entertainment consists of going to a strip club, I think you could probably do considerably better than that.
Yeah.
Steve, I might also add that you can tell that a party is legitimately aggrieved when they turn around and try to trade on the fame that comes to them as a result of suing because of their grievance.
Yes, that is totally legit, yo. I'll tell you what I just noticed. I'm turning 50 next April, and I'm getting a little nervous about it. And I saw
I'm turning
Stormy
60 next April.
Well, congratulations. We're both holding on pretty well, and that's the thing. I saw this story, and I thought, I'm not sure she should still be stripping, but for somebody about my age, she's holding up very nicely. And then I read down in the story, and she's only 39. Oh, that's
about my age.
That's got to be a hard life. All right, Scott, Nancy Pelosi thinks questioning her ability to lead is sexist. Then she forgets Mitch McConnell's name. What kind of man-hater forgets the majority leader's name, Scott?
Yeah, I know that there is this drumbeat of Pelosi watch now, where they're just anytime. Anytime she stumbles or trips up or forgets something, now all of a sudden is on the right. Is she sane? And I'm thinking, well, when she was completely lucid, she was insane. So why? I don't know why this is a new thing now. I know I'm kind of hoping that she is becoming a little more sort of decrepit and is not able to be as effective as she has been. And for whatever else you want to say about Nancy Pelosi, the woman has been an unbelievably effective Democratic leader for that party. She has raised money. She has put people in positions of power. She has, transformed that party in many ways into the thing that we can all be ashamed of. And
they're going to bury her in the Kremlin wall.
Yeah,
with honor.
They probably will. There will be a glass case somewhere where people will
Lenin, Pelosi,
perpetually
the two
parade by,
and she'll still be alive. She'll just sleep there.
So this has been my sadly my attitude from the beginning of what was it, about in 2002 or 4 when I started writing Scrapple Face. It is I think that there's plenty to mock about Nancy Pelosi. If she's starting to show the signs of age or dementia or anything like that, that's not a funny thing to me. That's that's sad for anybody. She's somebody's grandma, and I feel bad about that aspect of it. But as we briefly discussed in our backstage meeting, at a certain point, leaders need to know when to step aside and allow a new generation to step up. And ideally, the voters would step the leaders aside. essentially shunt them to the side. But that has not happened. The lure of incumbency has been so powerful that we send these people back time and again. Nancy Pelosi ought to have the good sense to step aside, and she's crushing the lower levels of leadership in that party by her continued presence. And by the same token, Senator John McCain, who is has this terrible brain tumor, ought to step aside as well, so that the party can continue to function in the Senate with effectiveness.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. And I don't know. I don't know if they can actually get rid of Nancy. She controls the purse strings of Silicon Valley donors, and that gives her an awful lot of power.
Well, she controls those purse strings, and she also controls the short hairs of everybody under her leadership.
Well, I wasn't going to say it. I'm glad you did.
I hope she stays right where she is.
Doing a great job, Nance. Love you. Okay. I love this. Bill, this goes right to the heart of just how phony the left is about dang near everything. Women's March mocked, wow, try saying that one 3 times fast, for pre-written press release opposing Supreme Court nominee XX. They released the press release with XX, where the name goes, and then when they fixed it, they spelled it with a C instead of a K. Is there any grassroots left on the left, Bill? Is it all AstroTurf?
I remember the coffee party?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, the coffee party.
No labels.
Yeah, and various and sundry other movements, Occupy Wall Street, and it seems like there was one before that I'm missing, but in any event, when you hear that people are being bussed in from other cities to make the protests larger on somebody's dime, I remember that footage. Remember that footage of like rows upon rows of buses parked on a street? I mean, it was miles and miles of buses parked on both sides of the road that for protesters that had been brought in from, like half the world away kind of thing to show up at the protest. And, there are times when the media bias is so offensive to me that it almost makes me just kind of do the, Norman coordinate kind of thing, and just smoke comes out of my ears and I just shut down and my little bracelet starts flashing, But in a world with any kind of a fair media, this country would vote like Kansas. I mean, if there was just anything roughly approximate to the actual truth, this country would vote like Kansas. So yeah, Steve, what do you say about something like that? It's just, it goes past unmockable into the tragic, I think.
If they had integrity, if those protesters had integrity, they would have kept their protest signs, for example, with the blank on them. Because the truth of the matter was,
that's right.
They were not opposed to Kavanaugh. They were opposed to Trump's nominee. And it really didn't matter who it was. Mm-hmm. So they should have continued to hold up signs that said down with blank or whoever it was.
But that's actually, that really makes the point that I wasn't smart enough to see. If your mission is to protest it no matter who it is, mm-hmm. then you have reached a point where you think that protest on the street is business as usual political operations, that this is how you get your way politically. And that makes me happy because protest fatigue sets in. And if you turn out 1 million people, which actually turns out to be 13,000 or whatever the number is, and you do that every week over some new cause every week, I mean, I remember when the protests in Washington were happening during the Vietnam War. It's like, holy cow, there's people on the streets. Now it's like, my God, there's nobody on the mall. There's no organized people on the mall. I don't see any signs. What is it? Is it some kind of a holiday?
And if these protests, these ginned up AstroTurf protests had anything like the public support that they claim to have, we'd have President McGovern, we'd have President Humphrey, and Carter would have served 2 terms, and all the rest, and of course, none of that came to be. All right.
Still no Dukakis, though. Some things are beyond the realms of possibility.
Well, clearly. He's a worse candidate since Hillary Clinton. Oh, I got that backwards. Scott, last story, since you are our resident humor expert. Stephen Colbert rolls his eyes at the Sean Hannity factor in Trump's Supreme Court pick. It really has nothing to do with Hannity or Trump or the Supreme Court. It's this idea that making faces, eye rolls at the camera is what gets the laughs these days. Have we sunk that far?
What did he roll his eyes at?
That his whole gag was
just rolling his eyes.
Rolling his eyes, and it was
as Trump and Hannity talked.
Yeah, and it got a big enough reaction that it was a headline story somewhere that, oh my goodness, it was so awful that Stephen Colbert rolled his eyes.
It's funny how I don't know if you guys have noticed this because you probably don't go there anymore, but CNN.com's homepage often has like a leading story on the front page will be what comedians are saying about the president, for example, usually the president.
Yeah.
And so like that's now, I think they looked at the Daily Show and they thought, well, you know, Jon Stewart at that time was treading on our territory. Let's tread on his territory. Now, you know, a regular part of the news is what comedians are saying about the news, which, you know, as a journalism major way back in the day, I'm not saying that we were pure as driven snow or there wasn't bias back then. There certainly was. But it's like that's just anathema to what you would ever put on the front page. I mean, the comics were in the back. They were like on the second to the last page next to the horoscopes, you know. And now it's become front page. Yeah, I mean, all more power to the comedians like Stephen Colbert. Whatever they can do to get a laugh, that's their business. So if it works for him to get laughs, I don't care what he says. But I also don't see him as a serious social commentator and say, maybe I should reconsider my position based on what Stephen Colbert has done with his eyeballs.
Sorry to jump in again, but a genuine comedian, Evan Sayet, was telling me this story where Christopher Hitchens was on the Bill Maher show. And Hitchens said, "You're not a comedian. You're not a real comedian." And Maher said, "What are you talking about?" He says, "No, everything you do is just a cheap knee-jerk reaction. What do you say?" He said, "Watch this." And he turned to the audience. He says, "I think George Bush is an idiot." And the crowd roars and laughs and applauds. And you see, anybody can do this.
That's right.
That's just brutal. And truth hurts. Bill Maher, not Bill Whittle. All right, last story. This is such a great example of fake news. I mean, it's a real story, but it's fake news, and it comes from BuzzFeed, which shouldn't surprise you. But the headline to the story, and it was like bold-faced, blue on white, right? Is gay sex could be decriminalized for 1.3 billion people in India. As though there are 1.3 billion people in India eager to have gay sex, but damn that law.
Restrained by the law against doing so.
Now, I don't care what Indians or anybody else does in the privacy of their own bedrooms. That's up to them. But let's be
great, though.
Let's be honest.
It'd be great if they decriminalize it and the entire country of India, 1.3 people go completely homosexual. There are no more children born anywhere in the country. It's just the whole country's just been waiting for millennia for this.
Yeah.
There's plenty of food for everybody because there are no hungry mouths to feed children.
One big San Francisco bathhouse on the Indian subcontinent. No, it's fake news. I'm happy that, millions, tens of millions of Indians can enjoy their private acts without worrying about the law coming down on them. But come on, BuzzFeed. Don't give us fake news. Just show us the cute animal gifs and go away. And that is your lightning round for the week of July 10, if you can believe that already. Thanks so much for being members. You make this silliness possible, but you also make some important things possible. At least we'd like to think so. So thank you for your continued sponsorship, your continued producership, as Scott likes to say, and we'll see you next week.
Remember, whatever is not forbidden is mandatory.